Good afternoon, everybody. This is Holloway with the National Weather Service with Alaska statewide weather for January 12th, 2022. Couple options for you. 1-800 number gets you through a menu system and on the World Wide Web, weather.gov/Alaska. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please email us at the email listed at the bottom of the page. We do have some winter weather advisories to talk about, and through the interior, they have a winter weather advisory out in effect from noon Thursday till 9 p.m. on Friday. Also down through that Bering Strait area, the Shishmaref area, winter weather advisory is in effect from 6 a.m. Thursday till 9 p.m. on Friday. And lastly, up there near the Beaufort Sea coast, we have a wind chill advisory, and that's out until 9 p.m. this evening, so please check those listings. Lastly, it didn't make it on the map today, but the Juneau office has issued a flood watch for all of their area, so all of the Panhandle and that northeast zone that covers Yakutat. A flood watch is in effect from Thursday morning through Friday morning. So watch that and check your listings on that. So taking a look at the satellite image, you can see the next system coming into view there, just south of the Alaska Peninsula, spreading some clouds into the Gulf region. Again, we'll be watching that system. It moves north. There's another low pressure system over just south of the Panhandle that's moving north as well, but that won't really affect the Panhandle. It's going to be moving off into Canada. And lastly, there's some lingering snow showers through the interior along a stationary boundary, and some fog along the north slope, and some lingering snow showers out there in the Bering Sea. What does this look like on the surface map for Wednesday's weather? There's that 974 millibar low with an occluder front, mixed precipitation out ahead of that system, another weak low over just south of the Central Aleutians, 985 millibar low there, and there's that other low just south of the Panhandle, moving into Canada. Otherwise, some snow showers lingering in the Panhandle and across the southern mainland, with moderate snow showers possible in the eastern Kenai Mountains, but otherwise some lingering snow showers along the boundary across the interior. And also for tonight's weather, that low moves farther north, 966 millibar low there, with an occluder front, heavy precipitation out ahead of that frontal boundary. Otherwise, mixed precipitation across the southern mainland into the northeast Gulf Coast, and snow showers further inland. A little bit of a break for the Panhandle. Otherwise, some blowing snow along the Brooks Range, and some lingering snow showers again along that boundary, and some snow showers out through the Bering Sea, and some rain showers and snow showers for much of the Aleutians. For Thursday's weather, 972 millibar low now just south of Kodiak Island, with a weakening occluder front and moderate rainfall over there in the southern Panhandle at the lower elevations. Snow showers further inland and northern part of the Panhandle. Otherwise, some snow showers across the southern mainland, out through the Alaska Range, down through the southwest, and some lingering snow showers scattered across the interior, and some snow showers out through the Bering Sea. For Friday's weather, 988 millibar low now. That's going to be the next systems be coming in for Friday for the Panhandle, driving some moderate to heavy snow and some moderate to heavy rain at the lower elevations, especially across the southern end of the Panhandle. Otherwise, some lingering scattered snow showers across much of the mainland along that boundary stretching into Canada. And there's the weakening low anchored near the YK Delta, 997 millibar low there, and another low just south of the western Aleutians coming into play out there. For low temperatures Thursday morning, 31 in Ketchikan, 35 in Sitka, 30 in Juneau, 31 in Valdez, 27 in Yakutat 31, Valdez 27, 25 in Anchorage, 27 in Homer, 34 in Kodiak, 23 in King Salmon, 17 in Talkeetna. For low temperatures Thursday morning, 1 in Fairbanks, -5 in Fort Yukon, -2 in Eagle, -21 in Nukiavik, -10 in Point Hope, -6 in Nome, -3 in Galena, -2 in Tanana. For low temperatures Thursday morning, down through the southwest Alaska Peninsula and Aleutians, 13 in Bethel, 13 in Antioch, 22 in Dillingham, 29 in Cold Bay, 35 in Dutch Harbor, 30 in Shemya, St. Paul, 19. For high temperatures Thursday afternoon, looking at 42 in Ketchikan, 43 in Sitka, 37 in Juneau, 36 in Yakutat, Valdez, 32 in Anchorage, 38 in Homer, 45 in Kodiak, 36 in King Salmon, 28 in Talkeetna, 16 in McGrath, up to the North Slope and interior, 13 in Fairbanks, 9 in Eagle, 1 in Fort Yukon, and Aktuvik Pass, -9, -27 in Deadhorse, -16 in Nukiavik, -3 in Point Hope, 8 in Nome, 8 in Galena, 6 in Tanana. Down through the southwest, 20 in Bethel, 21 in Antioch, 31 in Dillingham, 34 in Cold Bay, Dutch Harbor 37, 33 in Shemya, 22 in St. Paul. Low temperatures Friday morning for the southern mainland and Panhandle, 37 in Ketchikan, 41 in Sitka, 34 in Juneau, 32 in Haines, 33 in Yakutat, Valdez, 23, 28 in Anchorage, 32 in Homer, 37 in Kodiak, 27 in King Salmon, 24 in Talkeetna, 5 in McGrath. For low temperatures Friday morning through the North Slope and interior, 3 in Fairbanks, -7 in Fairbanks, -7 in Fort Yukon, -2 in Eagle, -15 in Aktuvik Pass, and -22 in Nukiavik, -7 in Point Hope, 3 in Nome, -1 in Galena, -4 in Tanana. Down through the southwest and Alaska Peninsula, low temperatures Friday morning, 14 in Bethel, 13 in Antioch, 25 in Dillingham, 26 in Cold Bay, Dutch Harbor 29 in Shemya, 16 in St. Paul. High temperatures Friday afternoon, 41 in Ketchikan, 43 in Sitka, 37 in Juneau, 36 in Haines, 38 in Yakutat, 33 in Valdez, 33 in Anchorage, 37 in Homer, 42 in Kodiak, 30 in King Salmon, 29 in Talkeetna, McGrath 14. Up through the interior and North Slope, high temperatures Friday afternoon, 13 in Fairbanks, 9 in Eagle, 2 in Fort Yukon, and Aktuvik Pass, 2, 23 in -23 in Deadhorse, -16 in Nukiavik, -3 in Point Hope, Nome 12, 9 in Galena, 5 in Tanana. Down through the southwest, high temperatures Friday afternoon, 18 in Antioch, 18 in Bethel, 20 in Antioch, 27 in Dillingham, 32 in Cold Bay, 33 in Dutch Harbor, 31 in Shemya, 25 in St. Paul. For the CPC 6 to 10 day temperature outlook for January 18th through January 22nd, with all these low pressure systems coming in from the south, we're going to be seeing some above normal tilts across much of the mainland, and that extends over into the Panhandle with above normal tilts up near 70% above normal. Otherwise, continued above normal tilts along the Alaska Peninsula and near normal conditions through much of the Yukon Basin, including Fairbanks, and also some below normal tilts along the Brooks Range, extending over the Seward Peninsula and along the North Slope. And for the CPC, the Climate Prediction Center 6 to 10 day precipitation outlook for January 18th through January 22nd, looking at above normal tilts across much of the southern mainland and extends down into the Panhandle and Alaska Peninsula, with near normal conditions along the Brooks Range and below normal tilts along the North Slope, with again warm conditions and above normal precipitation and temperatures expected across much of the southern half of the mainland and into the Panhandle, with this storm tracks coming from the south and northward through much of the mainland and into the interior.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska. Band of IFR from just south of the Eastern Brooks Range there, southwestward along the entire Yukon, Kuskokwim River valleys out to the Delta, southwest coast, Nunivak Island down into Bristol Bay across Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island IFR eastward across the Northeast Pacific, part of the Gulf of Alaska up to the North Gulf Coast. Most of the Panhandle IFR, marginal VFR down toward Dixon Entrance. Marginal VFR for the central and western Aleutians, but the area from about St. Matthew Island to the Pribilofs, IFR, and then good VFR, St. Lawrence Island through the Bering Strait to the northwest coast and the western Arctic coast. And for the afternoon, marginal VFR, central north slope, but the Arctic coast looking pretty good, so marginal VFR on the east side there, but generally not a bad day. And marginal VFR into the Yukon Flats, a little bit of IFR lingering there around Fort Yukon. And then IFR, Copper River Basin to the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, eastward to Yakutat, northern Lynn Canal Glacier Bays, IFR. But VFR for the southern three quarters of the Panhandle, Southeast Bering Sea, IFR, right on up into the southwest coast, pushing inland over the Yukon Delta. Norton Sound, Seward Peninsula, up to Kotzebue Sound, Selawik, IFR, or VFR, I'm sorry. And the Aleutians, marginal VFR, Southwest Bering Sea, also looking pretty marginal. And some marginal VFR now up to St. Lawrence Island. And for the Friday morning time frame, we're looking at VFR for the western Arctic coast, say Point Lay, right on down across Seward Peninsula, Norton Sound. Marginal VFR, St. Lawrence Island, IFR, Nunivak Island, St. Matthew, the Pribilofs, Bristol Bay, into the southern Kuskokwim valleys, most of the Kuskokwim Delta IFR, and a band of IFR on the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range. More IFR over the Yukon Flats, central north slope, IFR. And IFR back in over the northern half of the Panhandle, marginal VFR south side, and IFR for the IFR for the North Gulf Coast, marginal for the Southwest Bering and all of the Aleutians. And for the afternoon, marginal VFR, most of the Bering Sea, Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, some IFR there just south of St. Matthew Island, then IFR, Nunivak Island, Kuskokwim Delta, into the Kuskokwim Valley there, northeast Bristol Bay, and then western Cook Inlet up to the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range, IFR. Susitna Valley, Matanuska Valley, marginal VFR, IFR Prince William Sound, down across Resurrection Bay. Portage, probably getting to Portage, Girdwood right on the edge there of the IFR flying conditions. Southeast coast, mostly IFR. Passes Anatuvik, marginal VFR, same forecast for Adigan, marginal VFR at times throughout the day, either approach. And Lake Clark and Merrill, lowest conditions, eastern entrance with that east-southeast flow, otherwise marginal VFR. And again, IFR pretty likely on the eastern entrance of Rainy and windy, marginal VFR, but VFR at the north entrance into the valley. Isabel, south entrance, IFR, otherwise marginal. Mentasta, south entrance, IFR, otherwise marginal VFR. Tanita, IFR, eastern entrance, otherwise marginal, and possibly VFR out the west side. Portage, IFR, Chilkoot and White, IFR, that trending to improve during the afternoon, may go marginal late in the afternoon. Just hold it at IFR for now. And for the freezing levels, about 2,000 to 4,000 feet over the Panhandle, otherwise off the surface there, Alaska Peninsula, up Chillicothe Strait, just off the North Gulf Coast and along the south coast of the Panhandle, but north of the Fox Islands, Adak and Atka. And for icing, that system coming up, a good slug of moisture, so look for considerable moderate rime icing moving into the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, and at least the southern eastern Kenai Peninsula, possibly pushing into the eastern Chugach Mountains, and then along the western Alaska Range, look for considerable moderate rime icing there, as well as Kodiak Island. Icing free up over the central interior to the Arctic coast. Out west, not too bad. Any icing threats pretty slight, as well as for the central and southern Panhandle. Moving on to the jet stream, south to north flow, 155 to 160 knots across the Gulf of Alaska into the eastern North Gulf Coast. Pretty light out to the west, northwest 65, western Aleutians. 9,000 foot wind flow chart showing 60 to 70 knots southerlies there into the Copper River Basin, southeast part of the state, and strongest over the northern Panhandle, Yakutat in toward Elfin Cove. 3,000 feet, same pattern. And moving on to turbulence, moderate chop, Panhandle, North Gulf Coast, Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, western Brooks Range.
So the sun, looking here from the ground, seems very constant and quiet. But actually, when we look at it from space, we can see it's quite turbulent and active. Space weather is activity on the sun and in the near-Earth space that can affect our technological infrastructure and society. The sun is constantly spewing out a stream of particles called the solar wind that goes out into the solar system. And it affects us here near Earth, where we're protected by a magnetic field. The interaction between the solar wind and the magnetic field can cause space weather. The Carrington event is the largest storm we've seen in recorded history when we're looking at space weather. But every solar cycle, which repeats about every 11 years, one estimate estimates that there's a 10% chance of getting a large storm like the Carrington event that could impact us here on Earth. But we see solar storms almost all the time. And these storms have an effect on our technological infrastructure. Solar storms can cause activity in Earth's atmosphere and magnetosphere that can damage electrical power grids that power our communities, interrupt radio and satellite communications, and can cause our GPS navigation to fail. NOAA is working with its international partners to ensure that we have different vantage points where we can observe space weather. Our space weather observing infrastructure from space includes the NOAA Discover satellite and the NASA ACE satellite that are stationed upstream of Earth to give us a first buoy measurement of the solar wind. It also includes the ESA-NASA SOHO satellite and the NASA Stereo satellite that image the sun and also make coronagraph measurements of the outer atmosphere of the sun, the corona, that can tell us when large explosions happen off the sun. We also observe the sun and the Earth's magnetic field from the geostationary location with NOAA's GOES. So the way we use the space weather information from satellites and from the ground is to be able to make forecasts and predictions, just like we do with hurricanes and terrestrial weather. We observe the sun and look for activity and see how it develops, and see if it's going to culminate into a large explosion that can affect us here on Earth. NOAA is working with its international partners to expand our observing capability. We're committed to observing along the Sun-Earth line. So we're going to do the imaging of the sun and the upstream buoy measurements of the solar wind along the Sun-Earth axis. The more we understand about the sun, the more we can prepare for it and become, just like we are a weather-ready nation, become a space weather-ready nation. And as we look forward to humans exploring out into the solar system and advancing our space commerce activities, space weather becomes more and more important.
Every morning, millions of Americans wake up with the same question: what's the weather going to be today? All day, every day, weather information is updated to create timely and reliable forecasts around the country. But where do weather predictions come from? Every weather forecast begins with millions of bits of NOAA data. NOAA weather satellites observe the Earth's clouds and atmosphere from space. These satellites continuously scan the surface of the Earth, collecting data about the atmosphere, lands, and ocean. The data is transmitted to NOAA's Satellite and Information Service, where a team of scientists and supercomputers process it through complex algorithms. Weather forecasts rely on data from satellites combined with measurements from the land, sea, and sky. The information is fed into weather models that run a series of complex equations used to predict future weather patterns. NOAA's National Weather Service then analyzes this data. NOAA provides weather data and information to the public and private sector, who all use free, reliable NOAA data in their forecasts, which come to you through your local TV station or wherever you get your news. We all depend on this information in our daily lives. Every weather forecast begins with NOAA data.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back from the break. I'm meteorologist Carrie Haisley with a look at marine weather conditions across the state of Alaska. Starting off with a look at sea ice. We do have the ice edge stretching from the Gulf of Anadyr down towards Bristol Bay. We are south of Nunivak Island, although north of St. Paul Island. With wind shifting to be more out of the north as we go through the next couple of days, we will continue to see the sea ice edge working its way to the south just a bit. In fact, over the next couple of days, we're looking for about 40 to 60 nautical miles, depending on where you are along that edge of advancement. So those northerly winds are definitely going to continue to push the ice south across the Bering. Now, as far as marine conditions across the rest of the state, we'll start off with a look at southeast Alaska, where we do see an area of low pressure causing high winds and waves across most of the Gulf. For your Thursday, we'll look for winds up to as high as 45 knots in the northern part of the Gulf, 20 knots, 25 knots across the southern part of the Gulf, a bit less in the interior channels. Fairly high waves, though. However, we'll look for waves to be up to about 20 feet in the northern part of the Gulf. Now, for Friday, we do see another area of low pressure work its way towards the Panhandle. Winds and waves pick up there, up to 40 knots and 26 feet in the southern part of this particular forecast area. Up around to south central, we do see the strongest winds and waves at the mouth of Cook Inlet, 40 knots, 15 feet for your Thursday, and then over into the Gulf, gusts to 60. They're offshore from the Prince William Sound area, and then winds out of the north up to about 30 knots across the northern part of Cook Inlet, 20 knots by the time we get to Friday, and conditions do lessen across the rest of this forecast area along the Gulf Coast and the Kenai Peninsula by the time we get into Friday. Now for Thursday, moving further west out along the Aleutian Chain and getting closer to Kodiak Island, we have an area of low pressure again approaching the area, so winds up to 30 knots out of the east and up to 20 feet for the seas there off the shore of Kodiak Island. Gusty winds across the Shelikof Strait area, 45 knots out of the northeast, and we will look for seas to be up as high as 17 feet in Shelikof Strait for your Thursday. Things do continue to get less as you work your way to the west. Improvement for Friday, offshore Kodiak Island will look for 25 knots out of the southwest and seas up to about 18 feet. Shelikof Strait drops off quite a bit though, 15 knots and 4 feet. By the time we get into the day on Friday, Bristol Bay, you're iced in, but 15 knots out of the west. Further out the Aleutian chain, northerly flow is going to be the story. That's what's going to cause that ice edge to continue to advance. So we're looking for winds up to about 20 knots, most places 25 knots there on the Pacific side around Unalaska Dutch Harbor, and then seas a bit less than what we're seeing elsewhere so far, up to about 10 feet for your max across the Aleutians on Thursday. Not much change as we get into the day on Friday, although a bit of a shift in the wind direction. We'll see instead of the northerly wind, we'll see more of a westerly wind, peaking out at around 15 knots for the central Aleutians, up to about 35 knots when you get into the western Aleutians. Western Aleutians there seas up to 12 feet. On up the coast, ice is protecting most of the coast there, so we're not dealing with waves. Are dealing with that northerly wind, though, that's going to keep pushing that ice. 30 knots just south of St. Lawrence Island, up to about 20 knots once you get south of Nunivak Island, 20 knots across the Norton Sound area there. And then winds picking up a bit for the day on Friday, 25 knots in the Norton Sound area, 30 knots there south of St. Lawrence Island. South of Nunivak, we will look for winds to be up to about 50 knots for the day on Friday. Now for Thursday, looking up along the Arctic coast, winds generally out of the north to northwest, 10 knots in the Arctic coast area. Once you get further west, we see the winds pick up, so 25 knots offshore Point Ley, 35 knots offshore Cape Lisburne, and then into the Kotzebue Sound area, 30 knots out of the north for Thursday. Continued gusty winds, especially offshore Cape Lisburne, Point Hope, when you get into the day on Friday. 45 knots out of the northeast, 30 knots as you get down around to the Kotzebue Sound area, and then up to about 15 knots along the Arctic coast. Now a quick recap of the weather forecast going into tonight. A strong low, 966 millibars, is in the North Pacific, and it is working its way towards the southern coast of mainland Alaska, keeping that pattern quite active and keeping the precipitation type a bit challenging to forecast. So a mix of rain-snow mix around a lot of the southern coastal areas. Once you get a bit further inland, we'll look for more in the way of snow, including some potential for some snow overnight in south central as this low pressure system approaches. High pressure gives the folks in the panhandle a bit of a break, in fact a much needed break as we go through the overnight hours tonight. But by tomorrow night, the area of low pressure and the frontal system associated with that gets a little bit closer to the coast. It does weaken a bit, but we see that frontal system get closer to the panhandle, spreading in another mix of rain and snow on top of all the rain and snow they've already had, and then snow persists into the interior areas. And then for the day on Friday, that area of low pressure moves onshore.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.